Okay, back after a Purim break. So this week we're doing Hullin daf mem tet. We're in the middle of Masechet Hullin, and this week we're going to be talking about Kohanim. Or Kohanim, right? Yes, no. Anyways, and in particular Birkat Kohanim, right? So probably one of the most well-established, important, ancient aspects of Judaism, and there's something interesting when you actually go and look. It's only 5 psukim long, something like that. It's a pretty short. And if we just review the psukim, so it's Hashem says to the Kohanim, you should go say to Yisrael, etc., etc. And then at the end it says, "V'samu et shmi al bnei Yisrael v'ani avarchem." Right? You will put my name on bnei Yisrael, you the Kohanim, v'ani avarchem. I will bless them. Okay. And really two questions arise, right? One question is a bit, I would say, less interesting, and one question is a bit more interesting. So the less interesting question is, are Kohanim themselves included in Birkat Kohanim? Right, so they're blessing all of Bnei Yisrael, but do they get blessed? Or is it just they remain unblessed and everyone else gets blessed on their behalf? And perhaps the more interesting question is, what gives the Kohanim the power to bless everybody, right? So is it that they have some sorcery or magical power to bless the people that actually has some effect? And if you would say, well, no, that's absurd, then it's just Kadosh Baruch Hu who's really doing the blessing, so why do you need the Kohanim? What is the point? And how does that process work? Every time a Kohen comes up and blesses, he forces Hashem to come give him bracha? What's going on?
Yep. It's like there's a phrase that says about doctors, Hashem gives them like Rishus L'Roi Fele or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a similar concept of like allowing them to do something.
Yep. And I think that's basically the kivun that we'll be going in. But we'll see nonetheless that there's kind of there's what to discuss about it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look at an interesting machloket between no less than Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva. There's something in this Gemara that I actually found was quite funny, but in the Talmud sense of funny. And then we'll look at just some various mifrashim about it. So let's start. Okay, so the Gemara in Hullin daf mem tet amud aleph, it says as follows. Okay, so Hullin, of course, even though we don't really discuss the halachic aspects of the Talmud in the shiur, but Masechet Hullin is all about issues of treifot and issues of kashrut and things like that. So the Mishnah being discussed here says that if there's a hole inside of the keva, which is the abomasum, is one of the stomachs. So if there's a hole in that, the animal is considered a treifa and you're not allowed to eat it. Okay, so the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Oshaya, Chelev shal gabei akeba, Kohanim nagu bo heter. So the fat that lines or surrounds this keba, the abomasum, so Kohanim practiced a heter, right? In general, you're not allowed to eat chelev that when it's offered on the mizbeh, right? It's asur, and there's certain chelev that's permissible, and it's machloket which chelev is allowed. So the quote here is that the chelev that surrounded this keva, even though the keva, if it got pierced or had some kind of blemish, you couldn't eat it's the animal because it was a trefa. But if it was shechted properly, the Kohanim practiced to eat. This was one of the matanot, and then also the chelev that kind of lined it or surrounded it. And why did they know that was okay? Rabbi Ishmael, she'amar mishum avotav. That Rabbi Ishmael had a teaching in the names of his ancestors that they used to eat the chelev that's al gabei akeba. The simanech, how do you remember, right? What's your mnemonic? What's your mnemonic to remember that it's Rabbi Ishmael who said that it's the chelev she'al gabei akeba is mutar. So Ishmael kahana Messiah kahane. Rabbi Ishmael was a Kohen. So he did something that was matir for the Kohanim. In other words, he was a Kohen, so he said, all right, the chelev, that sounds nice. We'll be noeg heter by the chelev. So it's the idea of Rabbi Shmuel Kahana, Messiah Kahana, that he paskin lekula for his brethren. Maihi, how do we know that this principle is true, that Rabbi Shmuel is Meka when it comes to the Kohanim? The Tanya, it's taught in the Braita, the Kod Varchud B'nei Yisrael. In the context of Birkat Kohanim, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Lamadnu bracha liYisrael mipi Kohanim. The Kohanim atzman lo lamadnu. So, as we said just a few minutes ago, so it's clear and explicit that Bnei Yisrael are blessed at the hands of the Kohanim, but we don't know if the Kohanim themselves are blessed. The Psukim don't bear that out. So, Kshehu Omer, Vani avarchem, Havei omer Kohanim mברכים לישראל, והקדוש ברוך הוא מברך לכהנים. Remember the last pasuk of Birkat Kohanim, it says, "V'samu et shmi al bnei Yisrael." Right, you, the Kohanim, will put my name, Hashem's name, on bnei Yisrael in your bracha, v'ani avarchem, and I will bless them. Who is the them? So according to Rabbi Shmuel, the them is the Kohanim, and so he is saying that when the Kohanim give the bracha, they themselves, the Kohanim get a bracha as well. Rabbi Akiva omer lamanu bracha liYisrael mipi Kohanim. And so Rabbi Akiva says, we know that Birkat Kohanim, Bnei Yisrael get a bracha for the Kohanim, mipi gvura lo lamadnu. But how do I know that Hashem blesses Bnei Yisrael as part of Birkat Kohanim? Kshu omer vani avarchem, havei omer Kohanim mברכים לישראל, והקדוש ברוך הוא מסכים על ידם. According to Rabbi Akiva, the v'samu et shmi vani avarchem, the subject, or the one who's being discussed, and I will bless them, is Bnei Yisrael. Right? So you will put my name on Bnei Yisrael, v'ani avarchem, and I will bless Bnei Yisrael. In other words, that's Hashem saying, I will bless Bnei Yisrael when you, the Kohanim, bless Bnei Yisrael. That's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. El Rabbi Akiva bracha leKohanim minale. So the Gemara asks, okay, that's very nice, but then Rabbi Akiva, if he learns from the phrase v'ani avarchem, the idea that Hashem blesses Bnei Yisrael just as the Kohanim bless Bnei Yisrael, so how does Rabbi Akiva know that the Kohanim themselves receive the bracha? Because the way Rabbi Shmuel knew that was from that phrase that Rabbi Akiva used to teach something else. Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak. So Rabbi Akiva learns it from the pasuk by Avraham. When Hashem appears to Avraham and says, Lech lecha, so amongst various brachot that Avraham receives, it says, V'avracham evarechecha u'makalecha ha'or. Anyone who blesses you will be blessed. So he says, since the Kohanim are blessing Yisrael, and anyone who blesses Yisrael are blessed, so that's how you know the Kohanim are blessed as well. So Rabbi Akiva knows it from this. He doesn't need to rely on Vani Avarchem to teach him that. And that leaves Vani Avarchem open to teach him that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses Bnei Yisrael as part of Birkat Kohanim. And then just to kind of conclude, so it says, Umay Messiah Kahane. So going back, what prompted this whole discussion was the idea that Yishmael Kahana, Messiah Kahana, that Rabbi Yishmael helps the Kohanim. How do we see that from this discussion? Because if you go back, right, Rabbi Yishmael said, how do I know that the Kohanim are blessed as part of Birkat Kohanim? So he interprets Vani Avarchem as proof for that. So he roots the bracha that the Kohanim receive from Hashem, or the bracha the Kohanim receive as part of Birkat Kohanim, in the context of Birkat Kohanim itself. And so he's doing that to help the Kohanim kind of in terms of rooting the bracha that they get as part of Birkat Kohanim in the Psukim. As opposed to Rabbi Akiva, who understands it from V'avarcham evarechecha, which is, not in the context. So it's kind of interesting because both, of course, Rabbi Akiva agrees that the Kohanim are also blessed, but he learns it from a different place. He learns it from the story of Avraham, and so the fact that Rabbi Shmuel doesn't want to rely on the bracha by Avraham, but roots it in Birkat Kohanim itself, is taken to be him trying to be Messiah Kahane. And because he was a Kohen, so that's the idea there. There's a question that should jump out at us in this discussion, and it would be easier, I didn't bring it here, but you draw just kind of the 2x2, which is always helpful for me when I'm learning Gemara. You have like two rabbis and then two opinions, and then you kind of line them and you map it out. So we have, right, Rabbi Akiva understands that the Kohanim get the bracha of Birkat Kohanim from V'avarcham evarechecha, and he understands that Hashem blesses also from V'ani Avarchem. And Rabbi Shmuel uses V'ani Avarchem to learn that the Kohanim receive a bracha. But the Gemara doesn't ask the flip side. In other words, how does Rabbi Shmuel, we're missing one of the squares in that 2x2, like where does Rabbi Shmuel know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses Bnei Yisrael? Right? Yeah. In other words, it's bothered by, it says, how does Rabbi Akiva know Rabbi Shmuel's teaching? But it doesn't then continue and say, and how does Rabbi Shmuel know Rabbi Akiva's teaching? Right? How does Rabbi Akiva knows that Hashem blesses Yisrael through the Kohanim from Vani Avarchem? How does Rabbi Shmuel know that? So Tosfot is bothered by this. And he says, Rabbi Shmuel lo yitztirich kra. Rabbi Shmuel does not need a pasuk to teach him that. So Tosfot says, well, Hashem is telling the Kohanim to go bless Bnei Yisrael. So I don't need a pasuk to tell me that Hashem also blesses Bnei Yisrael, because he's telling the Kohanim to go do it. So it's so obvious that he himself is involved in that blessing, that Rabbi Ishmael is not compelled to require a pasuk to teach him that Hashem also makes a bracha. If we look at the Rif for a second, he has a problem with that response on the left side in the screenshot there. והקדוש ברוך הוא מסכים על ידם, עין בתוספות, ולרבי ישמעאל לא יצטרך קרא וכו'. ותמה, but this is difficult, because לרבי עקיבא נמי לא יצטרך קרא, לאחי דפשיטא דמסכים, כיוון שציווה לברך. Whereas the Rif says, okay, I'll grant you that it's so obvious that Hashem also blesses the Kohanim, that I don't need a pasuk. So then why does Rabbi Akiva have to learn it from Vani Mברכים, if it's so obvious? You're not answering anything by using that response. And so he says, Ela al kochach tzarich lomar, te'af al pi shetziva otam levarech. Even though Hashem commanded the Kohanim to bless, umaskim imahem, and he agrees with or affirms the bracha, mikol makom enan mitbarchim ela mipi basar vadam, ve'eno domeh lemitbarchim mipi agvura. So the Rif here, I'm not quite sure what he's saying, but I think it's a chidush, where he says there's a qualitative difference between a blessing that a person gives to another person, even if it's done, with the approval, as it were, of Hashem, as compared to a bracha that is given directly by Hashem to a person. And when you have the human agent, it still is a more diluted level than it being direct. Ulekach itzterich Rabbi Akiva. And so Rabbi Akiva, because of that, said, well, of course to me it would be obvious if it said Hashem is blessing someone, I don't need a pasuk to teach. But here it's the Kohanim are blessing someone and saying, okay, Hashem is blessing through the Kohanim, so it's still enough of I might still have a hava amina to say that that's not true, that I need the pasuk to tell me that Hashem is also blessing, because it's not the same as Hashem blessing directly. And the Rif says, but essentially that's not a problem. Rabbi Ishmael doesn't have an issue removing that distinction between those two cases. So the Rif is trying to kind of figure out a reason why it would bother Rabbi Akiva and not bother Rabbi Ishmael, given that he doesn't accept Tosfot's response kind of at face value, because it doesn't really resolve it on the other side. The Yun Yaakov in his commentary also says something interesting. So he says, Rabbi Ishmael omer lamanu bracha Yisrael mipi Kohanim. So efshad Rabbi Ishmael azil shitato. So Yun Yaakov, I think he's one of my favorite commentaries on the Yun Yaakov, because what he's very good at is he'll bring from kind of what Tosfot does a lot of the times in Halacha and Shas, where he'll bring a statement somewhere else in the Talmud or somewhere else in the Midrash from a totally different context, and it'll kind of complement or contradict and he kind of enriches the sugya in that way. So he says, Rabbi Ishmael is consistent here with what he says elsewhere. De'amar sof perik the Shvuot, di'avo zakai v'chaper l'chayav, v'lo chayav v'chaper l'chayav. That there's this concept that Rabbi Ishmael states that it's better for somebody who is guiltless to come bring atonement for someone who's guilty than someone who's guilty to come bring atonement for someone who's guilty. The specific context of that sugya is not as important, but the principle is what matters here. That it's better for someone without the sins to come and kind of atone for or defend somebody who has sin than someone who is as guilty as the one he's trying to defend. So Yun Yaakov says, since Rabbi Ishmael agrees with that idea, Hachinami lo yavo mi she'eno mitbarech levarech acherim. Right? In other words, Rabbi Ishmael is bothered with the question of the Kohanim are coming to bless Bnei Yisrael, but they themselves don't seem to be blessed. So how could the Kohanim come to bless Bnei Yisrael if they don't get a bracha also? And so that's why Rabbi Ishmael says, no, it has to be Vani Mברכים applies to the Kohanim, because for sure the Kohanim have to be blessed if they're doing the blessing. So the Yun Yaakov says that's because it's better for someone who is zakai v'chaper l'chayav. In other words, it wouldn't make sense for someone who hasn't had a bracha to come give a bracha to somebody. Lachen HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevarech l'Kohanim b'sha'at birchatam. Kedei she'mitbarech yivarech et Yisrael. Lachen ein tzarich tu la'askamat HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then he continues and says, and that's why once the Kohanim give the bracha, they don't need beyond that any sort of approval from Hashem. Ki ein lecha askamato yoter mizeh. So he's saying, because we said earlier, we said with the doctor, right? That the Hashem gives the doctor the koach to be merapeh, right? So he's arguing a similar point here, where the fact that Hashem commanded the Kohanim to give the bracha, that in and of itself gives the Kohanim the power to bring that blessing down, right? And And we'll see in a bit about the Midrashim, about the significance of what the Kohanim are supposed to do and how it kind of symbolizes Hashrat Shekhinah and all this. But right, there is a difficult question here of when a Kohen stands up and says Birkat Kohanim, does he force Hashem's hand in the sense that now Hashem has to come bless the Kahal, right? How could you say something like that? So the Yun Yaakov's answer to that is to come and say that Hashem kind of gives that permission, that when he gives the original command to the Kohanim, he blesses the Kohanim, and through that everybody else is blessed. And he agreed to that up front when he made the command. At least that's how I'm understanding this. And this is why we say that Rabbi Ishmael is helping the Kohanim. Right? Because Rabbi Ishmael roots the bracha of the Kohanim in the same bracha that Bnei Yisrael get, in Birkat Kohanim. Rabbi Akiva has to learn the bracha of the Kohanim from the Avraham. And the Yun Yaakov's Chidush here is to say that why is it that Rabbi Ishmael is helping the Kohanim? Because for him, it's not just that he derives their bracha from Birkat Kohanim and not from Avram, but it's that the timing is that according to Rabbi Ishmael, the Kohanim are blessed at the same time as Bnei Yisrael. They're giving the blessing, and toch kedei they are receiving the blessing. Versus Rabbi Akiva, because he derives their blessing from V'avarcha mevarechecha, so the ones who bless you will be blessed. So first, the Kohanim bless the Kahal, and after that, they receive the blessing from Hashem. So it's kind of an after effect, as opposed to being part of the same bracha. And that, for the Yaakov, is like he's medayek in the V'avarcha mevarechecha, I think. But that's why Kohanim, Messiah Kohanim, because Rabbi Ishmael is giving them bracha at the same time as Bnei Yisrael, not kind of as a second afterthought once the original bracha is finished. Etc. Okay, I want to look at a few midrashim, and what we'll see is that the machlokah between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael on the sources actually are played out in different midrashim. That the Sifrei takes Rabbi Ishmael's approach, and then which is the halachic midrash, and the Agadic midrashim, Tanchum and Bamidbar Rabbah, take Rabbi Akiva's approach. So if we look at the Sifrei, so Sifrei is halacha. So it's talking about the halachot of Birkat Kohanim. Kol v'chud b'nei Yisrael. Ein li bracha l'Yisrael, bracha l'geri minayin, la'avadim v'nashim minayin, Talmud lomar emor lahem. The opening of Birkat Kohanim, Hashem says to the Kohanim, or Hashem says, emor lahem, say to them. Them is not just the Yisrael, but it's also for the converts and the women and the slaves, etc. L'kulam. Bracha l'Kohanim minayin. How do I know that the Kohanim themselves receive a blessing? Talmud lomar v'ani avarchem. This is what Rabbi Ishmael said in our Gemara, right? I will bless them being the Kohanim. Kot v'chud b'nei Yisrael, panim keneged panim. So face to face, right? The Kohanim have to face the Keilah. Ata omer panim keneged panim, or mol keneged panim. How do I know that the Kohanim don't face the same direction as everybody else? Why do they have to turn around? Talmud lomar emor lahem panim keneged panim, right? It says say to them, it means say to them face to face. Kot v'chud b'nei Yisrael sheyeh kol hakal shomea. Everybody has to hear the bracha of the Kohanim. There's a special inyan that the Kohanim have to say it in a way that's audible for everybody to hear. Oveno levenatzmo, right? From the psukim, maybe they're supposed to mutter it to themselves. How do I know they have to say it out loud? Talmud lomar emor lahem. Say to them, sheyeh kol hakal shomea. It has to be audible. Minayin shechazan tzarich lomar lahem. So how do we know that the chazan has to prompt them and say Kohanim? Talmud lomar emor lahem. Say to them. Okay, so it has all these. Basically, all the nuances of Birkat Kohanim are derived from these words that are kind of introducing the bracha in the Torah. And the point is that the source of bracha l'Kohanim is V'ani Avarchem, which is Rabbi Ishmael, and not Rabbi Akiva, who learns it from Avarcha Mevarchecha. Okay. The Midrash Agadah here, it emphasizes, I think, the question that I tried to be explicit about that could be bothering us. Where it says V'samu et shemi. So the Midrash Agadah says Kasher yevarchu haKohanim liYisrael b'shmi. Right, when the Kohanim bless Bnei Yisrael in my name, lo yu sfurim shelo yu mevorachin el mipi haKohanim. Chas v'shalom, that you should think that it's the Kohanim who bless them. Ela v'gam ani avarchem liYisrael. Right, that I am also part and parcel of that bracha, or I am the one who ultimately signs off on it, or ultimately gives kind of the koach in the bracha. And it's not that the Kohanim have that koach themselves. The Tanchuma in Lech Lecha says, "V'avarcha mevarchecha amar lo." Hashem said to Avraham, Atid ani lahamid mibnei vanecha shevet shemevarech Yisrael. I will, among your descendants, I will raise up a tribe that will bless the rest of the tribes. Zeo shevet Levi. Amar lefanav, Avraham said, Ribono shel olam, u'mi mevarech loto shevet. Avraham is concerned with, well, who will bless the ones who bless everybody else? Amar lo, Hashem said, K'shehen mevarchin Yisrael, ani mevarech loto shevet. When the Kohanim are blessing everybody, I will bless them. Shenemar v'samu et shmi b'nei Yisrael, v'ani avarchem. So this is that ani avarchem, I will bless b'nei Yisrael, which is Rabbi Akiva's opinion and not Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Amar le'em HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael.
The Kohanim.
Samu et shmi b'nei Yisrael. I will bless the Kohanim. I will bless the Kohanim. No? You're right. Sorry. You're right. You're right. Never mind. Thank you. That Hashem is saying, you are correct. V'samu et shmi b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarchem. I will bless the Kohanim, which is what you're right. That's what Rabbi Yishmael said. But now it's interesting. Okay. Because where is... okay. So this Tanchuma is combining... Thank you. You threw me off, but actually that's the whole point, is that it shouldn't make sense. Okay. Because who quoted the story of Avraham in the Gemara in Hullin? It was Rabbi Akiva. When he said, from Ve'avavarcha mevarchecha, teaches me that the Kohanim will be blessed. So here it's quoting the story of it's Ve'avavarcha mevarchecha, but it's using it not to prove that the Kohanim will be blessed. Not to prove that Bnei Yisrael will be blessed, because the
Kohanim are blessed. No, but that's also Yishmael.
Yeah, Rabbi Akiva learned from Vavarcha mevarchecha. Those who bless you will be blessed. Is talking about Yisrael, so that teaches that the Kohanim. No, I was right the first time. Amar Ela Rabbi Akiva bracha leKohanim minaleh. How does Rabbi Akiva know that the Kohanim receive a bracha from Hashem? So that's a Vavarcha mevarchecha. Yeah.
No, but then he says from when they bless the Jews, Yisrael ani mevarech ala Yisrael shevet shenemar.
Right. That I will. Instead of from Vavarcha mevarchecha. So it's both, really. Yeah, because the opening of this, right, this Midrash Tanchuma is commenting on the phrase Vavarcha mevarchecha. So it's really both. It's really, you're right, it's deriving it from Vani avarchem, which is Rabbi Shmuel, but it's commenting in the context of Vavarcha mevarchecha. So it's kind of it seems that it's focused on learning. How do we know that Hashem blesses the Kohanim as well, both from Vani avarchem and from Vavarcha mevarchecha?
Or the Amar Lai Asidani Lahamid is the way the Tanchuma is explaining Vavarcha mevarchecha, that your blessing will bring about blessing. Meaning you're going to have children that will bless the nation. And then it goes off on a tangent. And how do we know that they're going to be blessed? I don't know.
I hear you. Okay. So, yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. It's clear that it's like Rabbi Yishmael. You're correct in that for sure, right? It says that I will bless that tribe, Shenemar, Vani avarchem. So that is exactly what Rabbi Yishmael said in Hullin, right? LaKohanim atzman lo lamanu ksheomer Vani avarchem have omer Kohanim avarchem Yisrael v'Kadosh Baruch Hu mevaresh Kohanim. So that's Rabbi Yishmael. And I thought that this was according to Rabbi Akiva because it's in the context of Vavarcha mevarchecha. But you're right, and thank you for correcting me, that it's actually using a Vavarcha mevarchecha to teach something else, not like Rabbi Akiva, but rather to teach this idea, Atid ani la'amid mimecha. Interesting, okay. I stand corrected. I was hoping that it would be kind of a machloket between the halachic midrash and the agadic midrash, but they all agree with Rabbi Yishmael. It seems. Let's see, maybe the Bamidbar Rabbah, which I also brought here, does not. Let's see. Mashgiach min hachalanot. So it's commenting here on the pasuk from Shir Hashirim, looking, my beloved looks out the window. B'shah she'amar Kadosh Baruch Hu la'Aaron u'levanav ko tovarchu, amru Yisrael lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ribono olamim, l'kohanim atomer shivarchu otanu, Ein anu tzuchim ela levirchotecha. So here, this is the Midrash's poetic way, I think, of addressing the question of why do I need the Kohanim to bless? Why can't Hashem just bless directly? What's this idea of having this middleman as a conduit of divine blessing? Right? We don't believe in that. Right? We believe in there's no intermediary. You don't have to go to confession to get atonement. Right? You can go straight to the source. So why do I need the Kohanim? Let's be blessed from your mouth, Hashem. And right, when you bring the Bikurim, so there's a prayer. This also I found interesting, right? The context of Bikurim is every Jew who comes with his first fruits has to say this particular prayer, and the Torah says, right? It says, look down from your abode in heaven. So every Jew, when he comes and brings his first fruits, asks from Hashem to come bless Am Yisrael. So what's interesting, and I don't know if this is the source, is when Kohanim duchen, after they duchen, when they're supposed to turn back around and say something under their breath, and they say this pasuk. So the Kohanim invoke this idea of Ashkicha minon kodshecha min hashamayim v'orechem chayat Yisrael. So I wonder if that's to highlight kind of this point. What?
Maybe they said that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
What?
So you were just mumbling as you turn around.
Yeah.
These guys always asking for blessing.
So you turn around and you say, it's a Ribbon Shalom, da-da-da-da-da. Someone told me kind of a Purim Torah about that, actually. It says, why do we have to say Ribbon Shalom and then this bracha? Because after a Kohen finishes saying Birkat Kohanim, so everyone goes and it's like shkoich, shkoich, shkoich. But it's like, you're not supposed to say shkoich because they're just fulfilling a mitzvah. They're doing what they were commanded to do. You don't say shkoich. Say shkoich for the Ribbon Shalom afterwards. It's like, okay, that's why they added it. Anyways, but could be true. I don't know. Anyways, but shkoich Kohen, right? Shkoich Kohen. So what you're saying shkoich is that the Kohen is explicitly asking Hashem to directly bless the people, almost to circumvent the bracha that they just gave. It's a little strange, right? The Kohanim are up there by divine command to bless the people, and then they turn around and say under their breaths to Hashem, Ashkifa mimon kodshecha min hashamayim v'orechem chayat Yisrael. You just did that. Why are you asking for this bracha? So it's to highlight this idea that somehow, even though the Kohanim are meant to be this vessel to bring Hashrat HaShekhinah down, in the end of the day, of course, even though the Kohanim themselves recognize that they're just in the way, as it were, right? And there has to be this kind of divine channel. Amar lem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Af al pi she'amarti leKohanim shiyu mevarchin etchem, ani omed imahem ani omed umevarech etchem. Again, like the Midrash is bothered by this, I think, is that it's trying to say, yeah, it's true, I told the Kohanim to be the ones who are in charge of, but don't forget that I'm there with them, I'm their blessing, I'm the one who's really doing the bracha. And don't think that there's this caste of elitist priests who have the ability to really convey the blessing. Lefikach HaKohanim porsim et kapehem. And so the Midrash says that's why the Kohanim are supposed to stand like this. Lomar shakadosh baruch hu omed acharenu. Right, that the priests are conveying that God is there with them in the bracha. L'chach hu omer mashgiach min hachalonot miben kitfotehem shel HaKohanim. And the pasuk continues mitzitz min hacharakim. Mashgiach min hachalonot mitzitz min hacharakim. So glancing between the cracks, I think. So miben etz beotehem shel Kohanim. That's why you have to do like this, right? The Kohanim, they go like this. Yeah, there you go. So it's to teach that Hashem, even between the fingers, Hashem's presence, that the Kohanim are expressing that they are just a vessel, but really it's Hashem who's doing the bracha. Right? Okay. Kotavarchu adu dichtiv esechal agoy gadol. Amar Pinchas ben Yair sheva brachot berach HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Avraham. And then we actually don't have to read this, but basically it continues and says that it's going and analyzing the brachot of Avraham, and it talks about how the bracha of Avraham Mevarchecha is a bracha for Avraham, and it also kind of doesn't, it connects it in the context of Birkat Kohanim, but not explicitly to Rabbi Akiva. So I think actually all the Midrashim, you could argue, really are agreeing with Rabbi Shmuel in this context. I want to just conclude going back to what we said before about Yishmael Kahana Messiah Kahana, that the rabbis who were Kohanim were Mecca when it came to things to help the Kohanim. So there's another example of that in a completely different context in the Reuven. So Tana Rabbanan, הכל נכנסים בהיכל לבנות, לתקן ולהוציא את הטומאה. So, who's allowed into the Heichal in the Beit HaMikdash? So the Heichal is not yet the point where only Kohanim were allowed to go in. So everybody's allowed to go into the Heichal to build something or to do repairs, or if something's impure, to remove the impurity. Umitzvah b'Kohanim. And the Breita says, but it's best for a Kohen to do it, right? Im ein sham Kohanim, if you don't have a Kohen available, nichasin Leviim. So then have a Levi do it. Im ein sham Leviim, nichasin Yisrael. If there's no Levi, so it's okay for Yisrael to come and do it. Ve'idi, but either way, no matter whether it's a Kohen, Levi, or Yisrael, Tahorin in, Tme'in lo, right? Only someone who's Tahor is allowed into the Heichal. Amar Rav Huna said, Rav Kahana Messiah Kahane. So this is funny because his name is also Kahana. So it's not Yishmael Kahana Messiah Kahane, it's Rav Kahana Messiah Kahane. Rav Kahana, who was himself a Kohen, helped the Kohanim. Titani Rav Kahana, because he taught, Mitoch Shinemar Achel Parochet Lo Yavo. So in the context of Kohanim who have a mum in Parshat Amor, it says they can't go to the parochet, which is the inner the what separates the kodesh HaKodeshim. So the kohanim are not allowed to go to the parochet. Yachol lo yu kohanim ba'alei mumim nechasin ben ulam ve'lamizbeach lasot riku'ei pachim. So you might think that since kohanim with blemishes are not allowed to go to the parochet, that you might think they might not even be able to go between the ulam and the mizbeach, which is not further away. It's not as holy. Talmud Lomar Ach. The pasuk says Ach, which Chilek excludes, and that they are allowed to go there. Mitzvah b'tmimim. So this teaches me that, of course, Kohanim who have mumim are allowed to go bein ha'olam lamizbeach, but it's best for non-blemished Kohanim to do it. Im ein sham tmimim nichasim ba'alei mumim. But if you don't have anyone who's not blemished, then the blemished Kohanim can do it. But mitzvah b'teorin ein sham teorin nichasim tmeim. And here he disagrees with what we taught earlier. And it's also, by the way, best for Teorin to go in and do these things. But if they are not available, then you can have impure ones do it. V'idi, but no matter what, Kohanim in Yisraelim no. That it's better to have a Kohen with a Baal Mum who's Tameh even, than to have Yisrael go into this part of the Beit HaMikdash. So we see here that Rav Kahana, Messiah Kahane, that he permits Kohanim and says a blemished Kohen is better than a regular Yisrael, even if the Kohen is impure, ostensibly. The Gemara then just asks, which is worse, or which is preferable for a Kohen who's Tameh but with no blemish, or Kohen who's a Baal Mum but is pure? Rabbi Chia bar Ashi Amarav Tameh Nichnas Tahayish Terei B'Avodat Tzibur. It's better for a Kohen who's Tameh because he's not blemished, so in theory he's normally allowed to do things. Rabbi Elazar Omer, but he disagrees and says Baal Mum Nichnas Tahayish Terei B'Chel Kodshim, because in that moment the Baal Mum is not allowed to eat from the Kodshim, whereas the Baal Mum is allowed to eat from the Kodshim, whereas the one who's Tameh is not. He has to be purified. But anyway, we just see here another interesting example of the concept of the Rav Kahana Messiah Kahane, that Rabbanim who are Kohanim, the Gemara attributes to them rulings that are kulas by Kohanim to be perhaps tied to the fact that they themselves are Kohanim. Nepotism.
Insider trading.
It's reminiscent of a conversation in the Gemara in Daf Yomi a few days ago about, like, you have a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol who encounter a dead body. Like, who should move the dead body? What?
Yeah.
It's like this opening line of a joke.
Was it?
It sounds like the...
Oh yeah, it could also be a joke. It's a question, like, who's holier?
Barman says,
No, I'm just trying to
Is it
picture
the Nazir because he brings a korban if he becomes a Kohen, or is it a Kohen Gadol because
Dead
he's like
body.
he's a Kohen Gadol from birth? Like,
Happens.
he was a Kohen from birth, so
It happens.
there's a whole like ongoing discussion, like, what if he's this, what if he's that? So.
And then they're sitting there and like,
What's the conclusion?
which rabbi?
I don't think there was a conclusion. I think it's
I don't hold his opinion.
What about a Nazir Kohen Gadol? Is that allowed?
talks about that. Yeah, I think so. It talks about it.
Nazir. Is it? So it didn't.
I thought it came up in one of the Dafim. Didn't it say something about Nazir Kohen at some point?
It says Nazir Kohen Gadol, but
Oh.
the context is it's or, not and.
Ah.
Like the Mishnah Gemara ultimately vav as an or.
I'm trying to think. Is there any reason
That a Kohen Gadol can't become a Nazir?
He has to drink wine at any point.
Well, he's not to grow out his hair, right?
The Kohen?
Cut his hair, I think, right?
Well, as part of the Miluim service, they were all shaved. All their hair was shaved.
Yeah, so
but I don't know if that was an ongoing thing.
Maybe that's.
All right.